Okay, today, once again, I'm going to be referring to Ilyenkov's work, The Dialectics of the Abstract and Concrete in Marx's Capital. Check this work out. It's amazing. It's very, very helpful. So the comrades and I were starting with chapter 2 of this work. It does have a lot of sub-chapters, little sections that can be read as a singular essay. So highly recommend you check it out. I just wanted to touch briefly today on the universal, the particular, and the singular once again, just to clarify, because these are the concepts that are at the basis of the understanding of anything. If we don't understand the relation, the connection between the universal, the particular, and the singular, then we may not be able to understand dialectics altogether. So these are the basic concepts that we all should master. And the universal does not exist by itself. It is not some amorphous mass or an entity that perpetuates everything. It is through the singular and the particular that the universal manifests itself. It is through its modi or modi. This is actually the plural for modus. This is what I learned recently, which makes me very entertained for some reason. So through its modi or modi, the universal manifests itself. So this is why a lot of the people really do go down the whole religious road, because it makes sense to them. They see how there are so many patterns that are repeated in so many different people's lives. They see the naturally occurring patterns in nature, and they believe it is some kind of spirit, some kind of entity. But this is the manifestation of the material world. The matter, the substance transforms itself because of the logic of the matter and substance itself. It is not mystical, it is not spiritual, it is material. It becomes the ideal one once we start thinking about it, once we start making those schemas, those plans in our mind. This is when it becomes the ideal. So if we study the singular, we can get in touch with the universal. And a lot of people start falling for all kinds of little traps when they start looking into this, because they think that it's either or, because we are all plagued by formal logic, and formal logic can be helpful when we just start learning about the world. But as we learn more and more and more, we should realize that it is not the sameness that we're looking for. It is not the exact same thing repeated time after time. And this is what Ilyenkov points out in many of his works. It is not the same occurrence repeated indefinitely, he insists. He says it is the truth of the becoming, the phrases that I keep on repeating over and over here. But this is how you can understand the essence of something. He gives us a little example saying that the logic and the concept of the mundane, everyday objects is known by the vast majority of the people. We all have the concept of a chair. If we are given or provided with something that does not resemble a chair and told that it is a chair, we will all say it is not a chair. For example, if it's going to be a paper chair that will immediately break as soon as we try to mount it, then we all will proclaim this is not a chair, this is an imitation of a chair. It may look like a chair, but it doesn't act like a chair. And when we look into the everyday objects, Ilyenkov actually advises against this. He says we should not be preoccupying ourselves with the logic of the mundane, not because it is not interesting or true. It is because it does contain a lot of unnecessary details that are much harder to get rid of, to crystallize the concept. And he says the logic of furniture is very simple. It is just whatever it is used for, and it may change depending on the people's needs. And this is my own addition to this, that it may change according to the people's needs, but it is kind of ingrained. We all understand that a chair is a chair not because of its separate legs, not because of its ability to hold our butt. A chair is a chair because it is an object of furniture, blah, 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 blah. You give a definition of a chair, the vast majority of the people will be like, yeah, that's a chair. And all of the little particularities of each and every individual chair are not necessary for us to hold this conceptualization of a chair. because we understand its functions. We understand how it works. We know what it is there for. We understand its purpose. So the same goes for any kind of an understanding of the logic of becoming. If we look at the way humans have evolved, the way people have related to each other in the productive processes, we will see very similar logic, not to the chair, obviously, but we will see how the people's relations to each other have dictated everything around them. They dictated their lifestyle, they dictated their language, they dictated everything. So the relationships between the people, the relations between the people are material. They're not just in our heads. We're not just sitting there talking to ourselves, says I, who sits here speaking to herself, but I digress. So when we look into the singular, when we look at a person who has certain particular characteristics, we should not pay attention to the characteristics that make this person in an individual, a singular entity. We should look into the essence, what makes this person of humankind. And if we started thinking in already that this is a person, then we have kind of already given ourselves the answer. This is a person. The reason why nowadays the questions of humanity kind of arise once again is because of the rise of fascism, because they need a justification for themselves to be able to accomplish their little evil plans, and they don't do this because they're evil. They do this because they're scared. Because they're scared this is going to happen to them. It is the ultimate fear of mortality, the ultimate distrust in our own humanity. When you don't believe you are fully human, you're going to start becoming probably paranoid. You will point fingers, trying to find out what is wrong with other people, why they are not people enough. But going back to Ilyenkov and the questions of the universal, the particular, and the singular. So Ilyenkov reminds us of the fact that the universal lives through the different modi or modi. Therefore, by studying a particular or a specific subset of something, we can get to know the universal pattern of it. And we don't need to pile on more and more evidence. We don't need to make it a list of features, because remember, a list of features or characteristics is not the essence of something. You don't need to have seen all of the chairs in the world or the vast majority of the chairs of the world in order to understand that a chair is stood in front of you. Same goes to everything. So when you study philosophy, you don't have to understand how the concept applies to every single instance of something happening. You just need to see that general pattern and realize that it is going to change. It is subject to change, and you should be flexible enough in order to record the necessary changes, in order to observe the necessary changes. And you will only be able to do that if you get in touch with that subject matter, if you immerse yourself into subject matter, if you embody the subject matter, if you become the subject matter. That's not really true. You don't have to delve too deeply, but it does require quite a studious approach. In order to understand how anything works, you have to dedicate time to it and effort. Nobody can do this for you. Nobody can tell you everything. Nobody can give you a ready-to-go little booklet about life and philosophy, socialism or capitalism. Marx, Lenin, they came pretty close. Ilyenkov is coming pretty close to giving us the sets of instructions, but we still have to apply them correctly. So this is why we need to study philosophy. This is why we need to study dialectics, because it is the only type of science that provides us with an ultimate tool of understanding reality. But of course, we've got to be mindful of the fact that at the base, all of these are very simple rules that children even grasp. But in order to fully, truly embody them, we've got to study them pretty concretely. We've got to make sure that we've got those categories down. And we've got to remember that all of the subject matter that we want to own, because this is an actually good term. The ownership, to take ownership of something, is to make your own, not in terms of property rights, but in terms of that you will not be fooled fooled. If you know what the subject matter is, you're not going to be fooled. You will add to your knowledge base. You will change your views perhaps on the subject matter if you're provided with good enough evidence, if you're provided with good enough analysis of this evidence, but you're not going to be completely fooled. It's going to be much harder for people to lie to you about something if you are embodying the subject matter, if you are owning that subject matter. And the process of ownership happens through collective practice. This is what Ilyenkov repeats after Lenin, after Marx. Through collective practice, we can get to know the subject matter of any science concretely. This does not mean you have to work in the field within a certain science in order to understand it. In order to gain a basic understanding, or the notion, the way Ilyenkov calls it, you can read. You can read, and that should be sufficient. But if you want to get to the conceptualization phase, this is when you need to get your hands dirty. That does not mean, again, that you will literally need to get your hands dirty. It is just that you need to do this with other people. This is why I strongly believe that reading literature, especially theory, with other people is the first step towards conceptualization. Because when you sit there and you argue and you discuss and you talk, this is when you gain all of these insights that are not going to be easily forgotten. Because if you just read on your own, you may get distracted by your own thoughts, by your own worries, etc., etc. So reading with other people, you will be able to gain a better perspective. You will be able to get a more concrete conceptualization. And then you should do with it as it dictate. So you should work with that conceptualization in order to change your ways, in order to change your behavior in one way or another. So correct your actions, the course of action you undertake in this world in order to embody that conceptualization that you may have gained. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know what you think. I know I've already talked about this a lot, but I will continue talking about this until it reaches more people, because everybody needs to know this. This is going to be absolutely crucial information once we start organizing on a larger scale, and it is definitely coming, and it is best to be equipped with all the tools available. So I hope you have a great day today. Consider supporting me on Patreon. Do take care of yourself and your community first. Subscribe to me on all the other social media accounts, even though I don't do much there, and I'll talk to you sometime later.